Great stuff. Well, thank you for everyone who's joining us today. We're really excited to have Allie Brotherton from Orum join us for a conversation on a very important aspect of the sales process, the follow-up. So a little bit about Allie. Allie's a senior sales manager, and you've been with Orum for a little while, but with about 9 years of SaaS sales experience. Is that right?
Yes, I've been with Orum for a little over 3 years and been in the sales world for a while now.
Love that. And I've heard some very impressive things. You've built and led multiple teams of very high performing SDRs and been focusing on how they can generate more pipeline ever since. Sounds super impressive.
Yes, I love the world of SDRs, and that's where I started my sales career was as a SDR, and then moved into leadership, and now have the opportunity to work with a team of high performing AEs on the Orum side, and absolutely love it. So I'm excited to chat about the art of follow up today because it is so important and separates like the good from the great.
Yes, absolutely. That's a gorgeous segue as well. Thanks, Ali. Leads me nicely I suppose, my first question. So we've very much all been there after what feels like you've sent the perfect follow-up and then you just get ghosted. I think as a salesperson, it can be kind of tempting to give up when you're just ghosted and have been, I suppose, a couple of times. But the stats do show that persistence is key. Why do you think that so many sales reps struggle to stay consistent with their follow-up and struggle to lack the impact?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the first piece is just kind of the human component of sometimes, right, when we're following up and when we're kind of asking again and again and again, especially if we've been told no before or
Yeah.
not yet. There's sometimes this fear of like overstepping or of being, too persistent and rubbing people the wrong way. So I think, the human and psychology aspect of it is definitely a component that hinders people from following up as much as they need to. But beyond that, I would say there's two components. One of just staying organized and making sure that you are being diligent with when you're going to follow up, what you're going to say in your follow up. And that's sort of the second point is, let's say I reach out to you and you're like, okay, Allie, this is interesting. Maybe follow up with me in a couple weeks, right? And I follow up and I don't hear back. Like, how do I then differentiate my follow up from the first follow up
Mm.
that I sent?
Yeah.
And no salesperson wants to be the salesperson who sends the hey, just checking in repeatedly. And so I think that those are two logistical obstacles that sometimes sellers run into of how do I stay organized and stay diligent and consistent with my follow up so it doesn't slip through the cracks, and what do I say to differentiate it as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that piece around differentiation. I think one of the things that I definitely try and encourage reps to do and also try and do myself is when you're following up as a really important way to differentiate between prospects so it doesn't just feel like a generic follow-up template, try and reiterate what their pain is and the impact that you're hoping to make off of what you're proposing. And I think that can pique their interest and also just remind them of why they were interested in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be tailored. It has to be relevant, and you have to do it because sometimes when you first reach out, maybe the pain is not big enough at that point in time. Um, but down the line, right, it might grow and grow and grow and might become bigger. And so if you're reminding them of, hey, you mentioned this last time, this is why I'm reaching out and how I can help. Maybe you catch them at a better time that next follow up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think another thing that I've often seen in sales reps is that kind of sense of emotional fatigue when you've had repeated rejections. It can be really discouraging, and in some instances, if it continues to happen, can make your reps feel quite burnt out. Do you have any ways that you kind of deal with that sort of emotional fatigue and that rejection, or help others to overcome that sort of feeling?
Yeah, I think that is one of these superpowers that you have to try and build in sales.
Mm,
Is that just that armor of, you know what, it's all good, right? So if something really great happens, you're even keel. If something really low happens, trying and stay as even keel as possible. And recognizing too that it's not personal, right? It's not a personal attack on you, your character, anything along those lines. I know it can sometimes feel that way, but so trying to stay as even keel as possible is something that I focus on and try and encourage with my team as well. and just focusing on, why we think they can help. And sometimes if you rub a prospect the wrong way, or if it comes off too, pushy, a great line that you can use is like, I apologize if I was too persistent. Like, the reason I'm so persistent is because I'm so passionate about what we can help you with in terms of X, Y, and Z, because you had mentioned X, Y, and Z. And typically, people respect that and understand where you're coming from, especially if you remember those really specific tailored pieces, and it's not just a generic, hey, just checking in, is now a better time?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So move away from the generic and keep it as relevant and I suppose passionate as well is a piece that you've noted there. Awesome. So my next question is around sort of timings of follow-up, because I think that can have a really big impact. I read a study which stated that 60% of prospects prefer to be contacted in the afternoon, when they supposedly have more bandwidth. I think, of course, it definitely varies from prospect to prospect, but interesting that that percentage is so high. How can reps use that info without coming across as formulaic or predictable in their timings?
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting statistic, and it makes sense, right? Because I know for myself, when I start the day, you've got emails, you've got Slack messages, you're on calls. And so if I'm getting a cold call or getting a cold email, like, the likelihood that I see it is probably going to be lower, and then responding as well. And so I definitely think afternoon is typically a better time. And depending on who you're reaching out to as well, sort of a hot take, but especially if you're reaching out to executives, VPs, it can sometimes be beneficial to reach out in that like 5 to 6 p.m. hour as well.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're still working, but don't have meetings on the calendar. And so it can be a great way to break through the noise too. In terms of, not feeling like, oh, it's calculated, I definitely would not send a sequence and have it every single day or every single week, or however you're structuring your follow-up, go out at, 3 p.m. Like, that's going to feel very calculated and like, okay,
Yeah.
is she putting effort into this? Like, every week I get an email from Allie at 3 p.m. So I recommend not doing that, but rather staggering it. And if you do leverage sequences for your follow-up, making sure that they are manual and that you can personalize it, and having a task maybe at around 3 p.m. and then you schedule it to go out, at 4 or 4:30, something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a lot to do with the messaging as well. So like within that, your craft of your email has to feel quite conversational, and once you're further down the pipeline, not too formal. I think that's definitely something that I lean on once I've established some form of relationship, and I find that regardless of the time that you send, they often get a higher response rate because it just feels a bit more connected and a bit more human.
100%. I think that's a really good call out too, is your strategies can be different if you're cold prospecting versus if you're following up in an active deal, an active cycle. For cold prospecting, I've noticed that the phones are hot on Fridays. People tend to stay away from the phones sometimes on Fridays. I think they have this mentality of like, oh, people are busy, or are out of office, or this, that, the other. And while we can always come up with like reasons why it's a bad time to call, now is the best time to call. And Fridays I've found to typically be good days where people are in good moods. Lunchtime is another one that I think sometimes get overlooked, where people are, oh, they're not going to answer, they're at lunch. But in reality, a lot of us work from home now, and are still in the vicinity or have our phones near us, and can be a good time to reach out when you're prospecting cold.
Yeah.
I'm super aligned with you though. I think when you're reaching out on active deals, it's just about being prompt. So for example, let's say you have a demo with someone, like send that follow-up right after, or send that follow-up that same day. It really just shows that you're committed and that you're doing your diligence and listening and hearing what they're saying, and sending that recap can hold a lot of weight too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so true that a lack of speed in your sales cycle can really kill the deal, can't it? And if you're not vigilant, and if your follow-ups are too late, or they're not timely with when the prospect needs that information, then it really can lead to a close loss deal, which is not what any salesperson wants.
Nope. I know it can sometimes be difficult, but as much as you can, block time after your meetings.
Yeah.
Just get that follow-up sent and done. Get it off the queue. Because yeah, no one wants to have the prospect reaching back out to them. Hey, can you send me that email you said you were going
Yes,
to send?
exactly.
That is not a good look. And as much as we can, try and blocking those times after the fact to make sure you're getting those pieces done as well.
Yeah, a nice little sandwich where time allows of pre-prep and then post-prep, and then your call in the middle for sure.
Exactly.
Love it. So another question for you, Ali. So data shows that humour in our follow-ups can actually really help with response rates, but I think it's a really tricky line to walk because too much or the wrong type of humour can seem unprofessional. What's your take on applying humour to your follow-ups to try and gain a
Yeah.
response?
Yeah, it can be a slippery slope, but I think lean in, and be authentic first and foremost, right? If it's not your nature to be funny and be cracking jokes, and you try and you do, it's going to come off very, unauthentic and maybe not resonate. And so if that's not genuine to who you are and how you would communicate, I would shy away. But if it is genuine to how you communicate, and especially if you've built a relationship, again, in an active deal, I think it's definitely encouraged to let your personality shine, use a little bit of humor. We're all humans connecting with humans at the end of the day. And so
So
especially if your
true.
prospect has, if you guys were cracking jokes or building that relationship and that they're in that same mindset, I think it's totally appropriate to lean in there. I think there's a time and a place too, right? If you're reaching out to a C-level executive or, a VP level, depending on the persona, maybe you want to shy away from sending the cat gifts or sending, little emojis. I don't know, you guys choose, but that's my personal opinion. But yeah, I think overall, anytime you're reaching out and anytime you're selling, your superpower is who you are and how you authentically
Yeah.
communicate. And if that's with humor, more power to you. If that's not, that's okay too. You can still be very effective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, rule number one with corporate humour, keep it clean, keep it
Yes.
PG and PC.
Yep. Do not cross any lines there. It's not worth it.
Nope. Oh, I love that. Thanks, Sally. And so one of my, I think another really important point to address is with prospects who come back to you and kind of they hit you with the not now. What kind of resources or strategies do you execute when you get that kind of reply from a prospect? And how can you re-engage those hesitant prospects who kind of pie you off with maybe in a few months?
Yeah. These are my favorite types of opportunities because oftentimes when you are reaching out and you get that sort of brush off, the pain might not be big enough now, but eventually it could be. And if you do a good job of staying in touch and staying top of mind for them, they end up coming back to you. And some of the largest and fastest sales cycles that I've personally closed have been in that scenario where we had conversations. Hey, Allie, this is really interesting, but no budget or the timing isn't right for X, Y, and Z reason. And then staying in touch and being persistent and really tailored in how you're following up, and they'll remember you. They'll come back. We actually just had a six-figure deal reach back out to us because it was a memorable conversation when we had met. We had stayed top of mind, connected on LinkedIn, sent little snippets, and then lo and behold, now we have a great opportunity when the timing is right. So
Love
these
it.
are my favorite types. I think that it's really important to be, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but to be tailored in these follow-ups and to always remember too, we don't always need a strong call to action. So, Camille, for example, let's say you and I meet, we have a demo, maybe we meet one or two more times, and you're like, Allie, this seems really cool, but timing is not right. First thing I would do is understand why. Is this a true brush off or a true objection, or are you just kind of brushing me off because you don't want to deal with me anymore? And so understanding, well, help me understand, what makes Q1 a better time? Are there other initiatives or other priorities that are stack ranking higher right now? Or tell me more about what happens in Q1 where it could be a better fit. So step one, dig in, understand why.
Yeah.
I think step two is noting that, really getting an understanding of it, and then tailoring your follow-up based on what you learned, what the personal pain is for that specific person, any company-wide initiatives that you've learned about as well, and then relevant information on why X, Y, and Z is a better time. And then in your follow-up, it doesn't always have to be the same channel, and it certainly doesn't always have to be the same type of content. Differentiate it. So some of the things I encourage my team to look at are like product releases. You know, maybe there's like a new feature that you think would be relevant for them or that they could be excited about. Mention that. Send little screenshots. Case studies is another great one too.
Yes, sure.
And with case studies, you know, I don't know about you, but if I get sent a case study, likelihood of me actually opening the link and reading through the full article, like pretty low. So instead, like include a screenshot or a quick video of you talking through, hey, Camille, I know we had chatted about X, Y, and Z. Wanted to send this over. This part in particular, I thought you'd find really relevant because of our conversation about X, Y, and Z. So case studies can be great, third-party content like podcasts or webinars, and these don't always have to have a strong call to action of, can we meet? When works for you? Yeah. It can just be like, was just thinking about you. I know that when we talked, connect rates were a really big issue. It's an example for Orum. I was reading this article, I was listening to this podcast, and this team did X, Y, and Z, or this stood out to me as something. It doesn't always have to be related back to your product too. Typically people want to learn like what's going on in their world and their industry. And when you can be that consultant and providing some of those resources, and then pepper in, call to actions and pieces about your solution as well, as it makes sense. People appreciate that, and it sticks you in their brain, so that they end up coming back to you.
Yeah, and I think that really positions you as the advisor as well, which really helps with your relationship as a sales rep. You've remembered something that is important to them. You've kind of harked back to it. You've given them a great piece of info, resource, article, whatever it might be. I think that can be really valuable in solidifying a strong relationship where you're a trusted advisor rather than just a rep, for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, we're nearly at time, Allie. So just before we wrap up, I would love to know any of your final takeaways, any kind of top tips that reps can take away from this call.
Yeah, top tips, plan to succeed and be diligent with what that plan is. I think sometimes we have this conception of salespeople just being natural communicators or like, oh, they'll just wing it. And really the most successful sellers have a game plan for everything. And that's my advice on the follow-ups. So, if it's, hey, reach out to me in 3 months. Okay, great. Put it on the calendar. However you manage your time, but put your follow-ups either on the calendar, in your sales engagement platform, or in your CRM. I go a kind of a 3-step approach. I do all 3. I Slack myself, little reminders, and then we'll set alerts. We're in Slack every day. So it pops up, hey, email so-and-so. Okay, great, I'm on it. I also put it on my calendar for whatever date I need to do, and then I'll also schedule it in my SEP. That way, there's no way that's slipping through the cracks. So that's my first piece of actionable advice, is make a plan. Let's say someone says, reach out in 3 months. Okay, I want to have maybe 5 or 6 touches within those 3 months to stay relevant. When am I going to do them? What are they going to be? And then put those in your calendar. And then the second piece is, remember that we win and lose as a team. And so another thing that you can do with your follow-ups, it doesn't always have to be coming from you. We have amazing resources across our teams where you can leverage, your VP reaching out, or your director reaching out, or somebody from the product team reaching out, to sort of have this pattern interrupt of not just always Allie. Yeah. You can find a lot of success in multi-threading that way, and also reaching out to others in the organization too. Those are my actionable tips. Schedule it and leverage your people.
Yes, that's amazing. It's kind of like multi-threading from both angles. You've got that sort of top cover Orum side, and then kind of multi-threading the actual account itself, making sure that people are speaking about you, saying the right things to help you not only close the deal, but with your deal velocity as well. Lovely stuff. Well, this has been an awesome chat, Allie. We'll leave it there. But I hope it's okay to state that if anyone's got any questions, they're welcome to reach out to you. And again, same for me as well. But thank you so much. It's been great speaking with you.
Of course. Love the conversation. Great talking to you. And appreciate it.
Catch you soon. Thanks, Allie. Bye.
Bye.